Picture a logger in 1966 lifting a saw that cut faster than almost anything alive, while machines twice its size sat useless beside it. For decades, a handful of chainsaws didn't just cut wood. They cut into the future, packing ideas the rest of the industry wouldn't catch up to for 20, 30, even 40 years. Electronic ignition, catalytic converters, magnesium bodies. Today we're counting down 10 chainsaws that were built decades ahead of their time. Number 10. The Stihl 040, 1966. Let's start with a saw that quietly rewrote the rule book on what a chainsaw was even allowed to weigh. In 1966, to mark the company's 40th anniversary, Stihl released the 040. On paper, it doesn't sound dramatic, but look closer. The 040 produced 3.7 horsepower and weighed only 6.8 kilograms, and it was the first time the power-to-weight ratio of 2.0 kilograms per horsepower had ever been exceeded. Now, why does that number matter so much? Because in the 1960s, power meant weight. If you wanted a saw that could drop big timber all day, you accepted a heavy, arm-numbing beast that wore you out by lunch. The 040 broke that trade-off. It gave professional loggers serious cutting power in a package light enough to swing around all day, and that ratio, 2 kilos per horsepower, became a benchmark that competitors chased for years afterward. Think about what that did to a working forest. A crew that used to burn energy just holding their saws up could suddenly make more cuts, more felling passes, more bucking, with less fatigue and fewer mistakes. Fatigue in logging isn't just about comfort, it's about safety. A tired man holding a spinning chain makes bad decisions. By shaving weight without sacrificing muscle, the 040 wasn't only a productivity tool, it was quietly a safety tool too. This obsession with power-to-weight ratio is something we now take completely for granted. Every modern chainsaw spec sheet leads with it. Marketing departments build entire campaigns around a saw being lighter than the competition but just as strong. But in 1966, chasing that ratio the way Stihl did with the 040 was genuinely forward-thinking. It set the direction the entire industry would travel for the next half-century. That's why the humble, often overlooked 040 earns the 10th spot. It saw where chainsaws were going before almost anyone else did. Number 9. The Stihl 020, 1971. Next up is a little saw that planted the seed for an entire category that wouldn't fully bloom until decades later. Stihl launched the iconic 020 in 1971, a lightweight machine. In the early 1970s, most chainsaws were designed with one job in mind: standing on the ground, cutting trees down. But there was a whole other world of tree work happening up in the canopy. Arborists, tree surgeons, people climbing high into branches to prune, shape and remove limbs, often one-handed, dozens of feet in the air. Those workers needed something the industry barely made: a saw small enough and light enough to handle safely while hanging off a rope. The 020 pointed straight at that need. It was compact, nimble and easy to control. A saw you could actually maneuver in tight, awkward positions rather than muscling around. And crucially, the 020 line became the ancestor of the famous top-handle arborist saws that followed. The design where the throttle handle sits on top so the saw can be operated in one hand while you're up a tree. Here's why that's ahead of its time. The dedicated arborist saw, a purpose-built, ultra-compact top-handle machine, didn't become a mainstream must-have professional category for years and years. For a long time, tree climbers made do with whatever small saw they could find. The idea that tree care deserved its own specialized tool engineered from the ground up for one-handed overhead work was a slow-burn revolution. The compact 020 was one of the early signposts pointing toward it. Walk onto any professional tree care job today and you'll see descendants of this thinking everywhere. Tiny, powerful top-handle saws clipped to climbers' harnesses, treated as absolutely essential gear. That entire modern arborist toolkit traces back through a lineage of compact, lightweight saws that started taking shape in this era. The 020 was small in size but long in influence, a machine that understood a job most of the industry hadn't fully recognized yet. Number 8. The Husqvarna 180, mid-1960s. Number 8 is where a saw turned a raw idea into something the whole world could actually use. To understand it, you need to know what came just before. In 1964, Stihl began using an anti-vibration system. For the first time, a chainsaw was equipped with vibration dampeners so that vibrations from the chain were absorbed by rubber pads before they reached the operator. Around the same era, the Swedish maker Jonsered was also becoming known as a pioneer of anti-vibration and ergonomic design. But an invention only changes the world when it's refined into something reliable and mass-produced, and that's where the Husqvarna 180 comes in. Husqvarna perfected the anti-vibration mechanism with the Husqvarna 180. The model was a huge success, kick-starting the company's exports to the North American continent. Husqvarna, why does anti-vibration deserve a spot on a decades-ahead list? Because at the time, most people saw chainsaw vibration as just part of the job, an unpleasant fact of life you toughened up and dealt with. What they didn't fully grasp yet was the long-term cost. Constant heavy vibration over years of work can cause serious permanent nerve and circulation damage to the hands and arms, a genuine occupational injury. By treating vibration as an engineering problem to be solved rather than a hardship to be endured, these early anti-vibration saws were decades ahead of the industry's understanding of worker health. The 180's specific achievement was making that dampening system good enough and dependable enough to sell in huge numbers and to conquer a demanding new export market. When a saw becomes the machine that opens up an entire continent for a company, you know it struck a nerve in a good way. Today, anti-vibration is not a luxury feature. It's a legal and ergonomic expectation. Every serious saw has springs, rubber mounts, or isolators between the engine and the handles. Regulations in many countries now limit how much vibration a worker can be exposed to. The Husqvarna 180 helped push that entire conversation forward, protecting hands that hadn't even started hurting yet. That's foresight worth ranking. Number 7. The Stihl 041 AV Electronic, late 1960s. At number 7, we've got a saw that dragged chainsaw starting into the electronic age while most engines in the world still relied on fiddly mechanical parts. In 1968, an electronic ignition mechanism ensured trouble-free starting and optimal combustion for the first time on the chainsaw 041 AV. To appreciate this, you have to remember how small engines worked back then. Ignition depended on contact breaker points, tiny mechanical switches that opened and closed to fire the spark plug. Points worked, but they were a constant maintenance headache. They wore out, they burned and pitted, they needed cleaning and re-gapping. They drifted out of adjustment, and when they did, your saw got hard to start, ran rough, or wouldn't fire at all, usually at the worst possible moment, deep in the woods, miles from a workbench. Electronic ignition swept all of that away. With no mechanical points to wear out, you got reliable starting and cleaner, more consistent combustion, cold morning after cold morning, with far less fuss. For a professional whose livelihood depended on a saw firing up on the second or third pull every single time, this was a genuinely huge deal. And here's the ahead of its time part. Electronic ignition wouldn't become standard across ordinary consumer engines, cars, motorcycles, lawn equipment until well into the following decade and beyond. Millions of machines soldiered on with points for years. Yet here was a chainsaw adopting the technology at the tail end of the 1960s on a professional saw built for the harshest conditions imaginable. Pair that ignition with the anti-vibration handle the AV designation refers to, and the 041 AV electronic starts to look like a saw assembled from tomorrow's parts. Modern chainsaws, of course, all use electronic ignition. It's so universal nobody even mentions it anymore, which is exactly the point. When a feature becomes so ordinary that it disappears from the conversation, that's usually a sign somebody adopted it long before the rest of the world was ready. Stihl did, and reliable cold starts have been quietly saving loggers' shoulders ever since. Number 6. The Husqvarna 2100 CD, late 1970s. Number 6 is a monster, but a clever monster. Introduced in the late 1970s, the Husqvarna 2100 CD was a roughly 100cc big-bore beast built for the heaviest work a forest could throw at a man. And here's the twist that lands it on this list. It was Husqvarna's most powerful professional saw, yet in spite of its large capacity, it was easy to handle on account of a favorable power-to-weight ratio. That combination, enormous displacement and yet manageable handling, was the whole trick. In the world of big saws, brute force usually comes with brutal weight and vicious handling. Plenty of huge saws of that era were punishing to run. The 2100 CD delivered giant tree redwood country muscle. While still being a saw, a skilled operator could actually control and work with over a long shift. The result was a machine that earned near legendary status among the people who used it hardest. It became the king of the woods in the biggest timber, the saw everyone wanted when the trees got truly massive, and its reputation didn't fade when it went out of production. Quite the opposite. The 2100 has been praised as one of the best chainsaws ever made, holding its own against other legends, with torque and reliability that keep it a favorite among professionals, and its performance still draws collectors and professionals alike. Why ahead of its time? Because durability and repairability like this were built in at a level that outlasted entire generations of newer, flashier saws. Owners talk about buying one new and still using it decades later to mill lumber, saying it runs great to this day. A tool that keeps working reliably 40 and 50 years after it left the factory was engineered with a kind of long-term integrity that a lot of modern, more disposable equipment simply doesn't have. The 2100 CD proved a big saw didn't have to be a clumsy, throwaway sledgehammer. It could be powerful, controllable, and built to essentially never die. That philosophy, real power, thoughtful handling, and near-immortal durability is something the best modern pro saws still aspire to. The 2100 got there decades early. Number 5. The Husqvarna 40. 1980. Halfway through, and we hit a saw that changed what a chainsaw was actually made of. In 1980, Husqvarna launched the Husqvarna 40, a chainsaw made of lightweight composite materials. Its compact design and reduced weight meant it could be used for longer periods of time. Stop and think about what a chainsaw body was for most of its history. Metal, heavy castings, metal housings, sturdy, sure, but heavy and cold and tiring to hold. The idea of building the structure of a working chainsaw out of advanced lightweight composite and polymer materials was, in 1980, a real leap of faith. Would plastic-based materials survive the vibration, the heat, the impacts, the sheer abuse of forestry and firewood work? Plenty of people were skeptical. Husqvarna bet that modern materials could take it, and they were right. By swapping heavy metal for engineered composites where it counted, the Husqvarna 40 dropped weight significantly, and less weight isn't a minor convenience. It directly translates to less operator fatigue, which means longer working sessions, steadier control, and again better safety, because a fresh, unexhausted operator is a safer operator. Here's the forward-looking part. Look at any chainsaw sold today and you'll find composite and polymer construction everywhere. Housings, handles, covers, tanks. Advanced lightweight materials are the absolute default now, precisely because they let engineers cut weight without cutting strength. But in 1980, committing to that approach on a real production saw was pioneering. It required trusting that these materials were tough enough for one of the most demanding tools on Earth. The Husqvarna 40 helped prove the concept and pointed the entire industry toward a lighter, more comfortable, more maneuverable future. It's a great example of how ahead of its time isn't always about a flashy gadget. Sometimes the revolution is in the boring-sounding stuff, like what the shell is molded from. The material science baked into that 1980 saw is the same basic idea that makes your modern chainsaw so much easier to carry up a hill than your grandfather's all-metal monster. Quiet innovation, enormous long-term impact. Number 4. The Stihl 024. Early 1980s. Number 4 brings us to a safety breakthrough, so important it's now legally required on saws around the world. The Stihl 024 was the first chainsaw to be equipped with the automatically triggered quick-stop chain brake. The 024 was part of a next generation of Stihl professional saws that set new benchmarks with an outstanding power-to-weight ratio, ergonomic design, and high safety standards, while being easy to use and maintain. To understand why this matters so much, you have to understand kickback, the single most dangerous thing a chainsaw can do. Kickback is when the tip of the bar catches wrong, and the saw violently, instantly flings back and up toward the operator's face and body. It happens in a fraction of a second, faster than human reflexes. For decades, kickback was one of the leading causes of horrific chainsaw injuries. The quick-stop feature brought the saw chain to a standstill in a fraction of a second. An automatically triggered chain brake means that in a dangerous event, the system slams the chain to a dead stop essentially instantly, often faster than the operator could ever react on their own. A spinning chain hitting your body is a catastrophe. A stopped chain is a bruise and a bad scare. That difference is measured in fingers, in eyes, in lives. What makes the 024 forward thinking is that it wrapped this life-saving automatic brake into a saw that also pushed the boundaries on power to weight and ergonomics all at once. It wasn't a clumsy safety compromise. It was a genuinely better professional saw that happened to be dramatically safer. That's the hard trick. Most safety features cost something in performance or convenience, and workers resist them. A safety feature that comes in a saw people actually want to use is how you change an industry. And change it did. The automatically triggered chain brake went from cutting-edge novelty to absolute non-negotiable standard. Today, it is mandatory equipment. You literally cannot buy a mainstream chainsaw without one. Every time a modern saw's chain snaps to a halt in a kickback event, it's carrying forward the exact principle Stihl put into practice with the 024. Countless workers still have all 10 fingers because of where this thinking led. Number 3. The Husqvarna 162, early 1970s. At number 3 is a saw that combined so many forward-looking ideas at once that it basically defined what modern would mean. Facing the grim reality that using a chainsaw could maim and kill, Husqvarna's engineers set out to fix it. In response, the Husqvarna 162 was developed, a thoroughly modern saw with fewer parts, an electronic ignition system, and perhaps most importantly, an automatic chain brake. The innovation dramatically reduced the number of accidents. Read that list again, because every item on it was pointing at the future. Fewer parts meant a simpler, more reliable, easier-to-service machine, a design philosophy the whole industry would eventually embrace. Electronic ignition, as we covered earlier, was ahead of its time all on its own, and the automatic chain brake was the safety revolution that would go on to become legally mandatory worldwide. The 162 stacked all three into one saw, at a time when many competitors had none of them. The impact on safety was so real, so human, that it left a paper trail. The factory in Husqvarna received a letter from a forestry company thanking Husqvarna for saving lives with the new saw. Think about what it takes for a company to sit down and write a letter like that. These weren't abstract statistics. These were real crews going home to their families intact because of a design decision made in a Swedish factory. More broadly, a breakthrough came when Husqvarna introduced the automatic chain brake, significantly improving chainsaw safety and preventing injuries. This was foundational. The 162 helped establish the modern safety standard that every saw you can buy today is built around. What makes it rank so high is the sheer density of foresight. It's rare for a single machine to be ahead of its time in one way. The 162 was ahead in three ways simultaneously: reliability, ignition technology, and safety. And it wove them into a saw that professionals actually adopted in the real world. It's less a chainsaw than a preview of the next 50 years of chainsaw design, delivered early. Number 2. The Husqvarna 262 XP, 1990. Our runner-up is a saw that people still talk about in almost reverent tones, decades after it stopped being made. Released in 1990 and retired in 1996, the Husqvarna 262 XP still holds a special spot in the affections of many. Powered by a robust 62cc engine, it was designed as a professional-grade chainsaw meant for serious, heavy-duty work, and it's affectionately referred to in the chainsaw world as a beast. On the spec sheet, the 262 XP reads like a modern saw, even though it's from 1990. It was lightweight yet powerful, built with durable magnesium construction that shrugs off wear and tear, and it could spin up to a maximum of 13,500 RPM. Magnesium is the key word there, a metal prized for being incredibly strong while also being remarkably light. Building a saw's core out of magnesium to get pro-grade toughness at low weight is exactly what elite chainsaws still do today. The 262 XP was doing it in a way that has aged almost perfectly. But specs alone don't explain the legend. It's the way this saw combined everything: power, low weight, brilliant balance, and that free-revving, aggressive power band into something that just felt right in the hands and refused to quit. It carried all the features you'd expect on a professional saw of its era: chain brake, operator presence lever, automatic oiler, magnesium construction, and owners describe it as a go-to firewood and work saw for decades, still going strong. Here's the real tell of a machine that was ahead of its time, what it's worth now. The 262 XP is widely described as legendary, with some considering it the best 60cc saw ever built, and enthusiasts joke that guys would practically cut off a finger to have one brand new again. When working professionals are hunting down and lovingly rebuilding a 30-plus-year-old saw instead of buying something new off the shelf, that tells you the original design nailed something newer saws struggle to match. The 262 XP wasn't ahead of its time because of one gimmick. It was ahead because the total package, the balance of power, weight, durability, and feel, reached a level of maturity that many saws still chase. It's a 1990 machine that quietly set a bar the future keeps trying to clear. Number 1. The Stihl 044C, 1988. And our number 1. The saw that was arguably the most ahead of its time of them all, because it solved a problem the rest of the world wouldn't even start seriously worrying about until many years later. In the 1980s, Stihl launched the world's first catalytic converter for two-stroke engines, reducing emissions of hydrocarbons by around 80%. The invention was fitted as standard to the Stihl 044C. Let this sink in. In 1988, Stihl developed the world's first catalytic converter for a two-stroke engine, reducing harmful emissions by 70 to 80%. And the Stihl 044C became the first chainsaw with a catalytic converter. A catalytic converter, the emissions cleaning technology most people associate with cars, shrunk down and engineered to work inside a chainsaw back in the late 1980s. Two-stroke engines, the type that power most chainsaws, are notoriously dirty. They burn a mix of fuel and oil, and they've historically pumped out a lot of unburned hydrocarbons and pollution relative to their size. For most of chainsaw history, nobody in the market was demanding cleaner exhaust. Environmental regulations on small handheld engines were minimal to non-existent. Customers weren't asking for it. There was frankly very little commercial pressure to bother. Stihl bothered anyway. They looked at the environmental cost of two-stroke exhaust and decided to engineer a solution before the world forced them to, cutting the nastiest emissions by up to 80%. And this is precisely what decades ahead of its time means. In the years that followed, governments around the world began tightening emissions rules on exactly these kinds of small engines. Cleaner two-stroke technology, stratified engines, and emissions controls became major regulatory battlegrounds. Cities and countries started restricting dirty small engines outright. Stihl saw that wave coming and started riding it in 1988 on a working professional chainsaw when they absolutely didn't have to. That's not chasing a trend, that's setting one, a full generation early. The 044C wasn't just a great saw, it was a statement that a chainsaw could be powerful, professional, and dramatically cleaner all at once, long before clean was something buyers or lawmakers demanded. Foreseeing the entire future of engine emissions and acting on it decades before the rest of the industry caught up, the Stihl 044C is our number 1 chainsaw that was decades ahead of its time. If you enjoyed this trip through chainsaw history, hit like, subscribe for more deep dives into the machines that shaped the modern world, and I'll see you in the next one.